The person controlling this conversation is not the one speaking. You've seen it happen, right? In a meeting, in a negotiation, two people are talking, but one person is clearly in charge, and it's almost never the one talking the most or the one with the biggest title. So what's going on? Today, we're looking at the actual physics of communication to decode how one single question can flip the entire dynamic of leadership.
So, here's the core signal we're decoding today. It feels a little backward, doesn't it? We're all taught that leaders are supposed to have the answers, that authority comes from knowing things. But the real mechanics of influence tell a different story. Authority doesn't flow to the person who just gives out information. It's given to the person who directs the search for it. Let's break down how that pattern works.
And look, this isn't just some clever tactic you can use. This is a recurring pattern that's wired into our psychology. We're going to look at 3 specific signals that show how questions quietly take control, not through force, but by shaping the very frame of the conversation.
Okay, signal number 1 is all about directional control. Think about it like this. Every conversation is a journey. The person asking the questions, they're the one holding the map. They decide which roads we go down, what landmarks we pay attention to, and, just as important, which areas we completely ignore. They are setting the agenda, making them the de facto leader of that entire exchange, no matter what their business card says.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. When you look at the power imbalance between these two roles, the person who is answering is, by definition, reacting. They are operating inside a box, a frame that the questioner just created out of thin air. The questioner, on the other hand, is proactive. They're the architect of the frame. One person literally creates the world. The other person just lives in it. That is a huge difference in power.
All right, that brings us to the second signal. And honestly, this one is a game changer. Self-persuasion. You can lay out the most perfect, logical argument for someone, filled with data and facts, but it doesn't matter. Our brains are wired to believe most deeply in the ideas that we come up with ourselves. A really good question isn't about getting information. It's a catalyst. It guides somebody else to articulate their own reasons, which means they end up persuading themselves.
And you know this feeling. The moment someone gives you direct advice, what happens? Your defenses go up. It's an automatic resistance to being told what to do or think. But when a question leads you to that exact same conclusion, it suddenly feels like your idea. It becomes a belief that you own, and that's so much more powerful and lasting than any order someone could give you.
Okay, our final signal pulls it all together, and it's about trust. In any conversation that actually matters, people's defenses are up. That's just natural. A genuine question works like a key. It signals, I respect you and I want to understand, not I want to win. And that simple act of inquiry creates what's called psychological safety, which makes the other person far more open to being influenced.
So really, it all comes down to perception. Being told what to do can feel like a direct threat to your autonomy. But being asked for your opinion? That's validating. It raises your status in the conversation without taking anything away from the other person. People fundamentally trust those who seek to understand them, and questions are the #1 tool for showing that you're trying.
So, we've seen the patterns, we get the theory, now let's watch how this game of questions actually plays out in a high-stakes moment where controlling the frame means everything.
Okay, picture a boardroom. The CEO lays it all out. Our only option is to cut the marketing budget by 20%. That's the frame. Dead silence. Then a team member quietly asks, instead of asking where we should cut, what if we asked what one single investment could double our lead quality? In an instant, the entire energy of the room shifts. The CEO has to stop. They have to literally pause their own line of thinking, pay a cognitive tax to process this entirely new frame, and then reconsider their position in front of everyone. And in that moment, the conversation pivots. The agenda, the focus, the power, it now belongs to the person who asked the question.
Now that's how the game is won. But what happens when you don't even see that a game is being played? Well, you fall into a really common and deeply frustrating trap, the answer trap. This is the false belief that having more data, more facts, and more answers is what gives you influence.
If you ever felt like you're talking and talking, but nobody's really listening, it's probably not because your information is bad. It's because you're busy playing the game of answers, while the real game of influence is being decided by questions. You're showing up to the job site with a wheelbarrow full of bricks while someone else is holding the blueprints.
And this visualizes that paradox perfectly. On the one side, you have the talker. Lots of volume, lots of words, but very little actual influence. And on the other side, you have the questioner. They might say very little, but every word they use has leverage. It shifts the entire conversation. At the end of the day, influence isn't about volume. It's about precision.
So once you really understand this, you start to see how elite communicators operate on a totally different level. For them, this isn't just a list of tricks, it's a fundamental mindset. It's how they see their role in any conversation.
See, for most of us, a question is just a tool to get information. What time is it? Simple. But for an elite communicator, a question is like a surgical instrument. It's a tool they use to direct attention, to reframe an entire problem, and to actually start a process of discovery inside the other person's mind.
And that's really the heart of it all. They don't see their job as being the provider of answers. They are architects of thought. They carefully design a path of questions that lets the other person walk through it themselves and arrive at the destination feeling like they discovered it on their own. That's how you get real buy-in.
So now it's time to turn the lens back on you. Because understanding all this is one thing, but actually applying it is something else entirely. I'm going to leave you with 3 questions to really examine your own approach.
First, what should you ask? And listen, this is not about memorizing a list of clever questions. This is about deep intentionality. Before you even open your mouth, think, what frame do I want to create here? What journey of thinking do I want to invite the other person on?
Second, what are they telling themselves? The most important conversation is almost always the silent one, the internal monologue that's running through the other person's head. Your goal isn't to win an argument with them. It's to influence the story they are telling themselves.
And finally, the one question that this entire framework rests on. Are you listening? Because without genuine curiosity, without a deep, authentic desire to understand the answer, all of these signals just become hollow tactics. They become manipulation. Questions only have power when the person asking them truly cares about the response. And that, right there, is the ultimate source of influence.